One of the things for people who are not where they want to be is that they have pain. And I remember when I was starting out, I was looking for passion. I was looking for purpose. I was like, I just want to find something that I'm motivated by. But it's the cat and the cheese. It's like we're looking for cheese, but we have all these cat behind us, and all we have to do is look and remember that they're behind us and chasing us. And so if you have the cat and you're staying in your current situation, right, you're being used by the business owner who it doesn't treat you well and is in this job that you don't really want to be in, versus saying like,
this is terrible. And because of this terribleness, I now have something that I can run away from.
If we're heroes in our own story, it's not avoiding pain, it's choosing from the very beginning the alchemy, which is like you have these terrible situations. It's like, and you have the opportunity to turn them into magic. I think being really specific about your pain is helpful. Instead of being like,
I hate my life.
I
hate the way Andrew makes me feel when he says that I'm a piece of shit and I'm not going to amount to anything, comma, because he's right. Like, why does it hurt me?
The things that bother us are the ones that you know have an element of truth, or sometimes not an element, are comprised almost entirely of truth, and we just don't want to look at it. And so I think it's the twisting the knife is looking in the mirror and saying, what if they're right?
Need motivation?
Watch the top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need them for me, because I want to wake up every day and watch a video that puts me in a mindset to believe in myself more and go off and accomplish amazing things and attack the day. And I hope that this video does that for you as well. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Alex Hormozi, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is learn to run a business.
What do you say to all the people now that want to start a whole, they're just like, I'm going to go buy businesses because that's what cool people do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go hire an operator. You have any words for those people?
Well, right now, buying businesses is like in vogue. I don't really know why it got in vogue, but my best guess is that we have so many people retiring right now that there's just a huge supply spike. And then a lot of people who'd never made their money buying businesses, selling courses on how to buy businesses. Because the thing is, and this is kind of for the audience, is like, if you make your money buying businesses and you're really good at it, you don't need to sell a course. Like the best people at buying businesses buy businesses and hold them and invest. Like I think Naval said, like the best investors don't sell courses on investing. You know what I mean? Because like if you're really good at it, you don't need to. And I kind of stick by that. And so it is kind of, and there's a lot of marketing dollars that are going behind that and a lot of content being made because it's like sexy. And the idea of buying a business for no money down that makes $500,000 a year, which is absolutely possible. You totally can do that. But the thing that they miss is that I can buy a business for $0 down that makes $500,000 or $1 million a year and know how to run it. If you've never run a business, and even if you do somehow magically pull off that deal, you're still screwed because you have no idea how to run a business. And so it's like you still lack the skills even though you can close the sale. Like I could sell that I could build a skyscraper. And if I somehow manage to BS my way through the negotiations and close the contract, I still have to build a skyscraper. And if you've never built a building before or even a house, very tough. And the likelihood that you then lose your ass on, because like you'll get the business that does $1 million in profit per year for $0 down, but not for $0. And that's the piece that I think a lot of people miss. It's like, it's not free. Like you have a liability or you have a debt if you do some sort of seller financing, creative financing, whatever. It's like, but now you owe this person.
Rule number 3 is build confidence.
When someone comes to you with imposter syndrome or not fully sure of themselves, what do you say to them?
It's really reasonable that you would feel this way. Maybe you shouldn't be confident. Because that's the thing is, it's like, if we were to zoom in, like, what does the word confidence mean? Like, let's look at statistics, right? People are like, what is our confidence in this statistic? And so they have evidence, they have data to support how confident they are in whatever the stat is, right? And so if we are confident in something, then it means that we believe we have a high probability of achieving whatever the prediction is, right? So like, how strong is the prediction we have? Well, how do you make predictions? You usually use a basis of data. And so if our past is the data set that we have, then we can be like, if I've worked out every day for 4 years, and then somebody comes up to me and is like, dude, you're just so like confident about working out, or it just seems like you're so certain. Like, how are you so motivated? All this stuff. It's like, I'm pretty confident I'm going to go to the gym because I have gone to the gym every day for 4 years. I think confidence, if you're wearing it, doesn't feel like confidence. It feels obvious. And I think that's the big difference. Because I remember that tweet got taken from multiple different instances and then glued together. So the outwork your self-doubt came from a small speaking event that Leila and I did. And someone said, how do you guys because I just presented all the stuff on sales and building sales teams. And they were like, how are you so confident? Like, you seem so certain about this stuff. And I was like, and it was weird because I don't come from the personal development world. So this was like all new to me. And I was like, I don't know. This is just what it is. This is how you build and scale sales teams. I know this because I've done it. Like, this is it. I don't need to beat my chest and look in the mirror and be like, really, like, I'm going to crush this speech today. It was just because like I was talking about stuff I knew, and I knew it because I had done it. And so if someone isn't confident, it might be right for them to be unconfident. Now, the flip side is, and this is what I would add to answer that person, not tongue in cheek, if somebody actually did come to me, I would say, what would you require someone to have done for you to say it would be reasonable for them to talk about this subject? And if they listed out these stats, and then I said, okay, do you match that? Or do you exceed that? Now, if they said, I do kind of match that and exceed that, then I'm like, then just get out of your own way, man. Just talk about what you know. And if you feel like you don't know it, then don't say it. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side, if they're like, no, I don't match that, then I'm like, then get off the stage. Go back in the trenches, go do the reps. And then when you come back, you will feel confident because you will have, quote, outworked yourself out, which is really giving yourself undeniable proof. Because like, I don't like the chest beating thing. If you are confident without data, you're delusional. Like, you're a faker.
Yeah.
I just think it's fake. You're either faking it or you're copy pasting someone else's experience. Because otherwise, where would you get the data from? Like, what you're saying, where would you get it from? You get it from somebody else that you heard, which means you're irrelevant. Like, they probably said it better because they did it. So just like, stop and go do your own thing.
Rule number 4 is stop caring what others think.
A friendly reminder that in 3 generations, everyone who knew us will be dead, including the people whose opinions stopped you from doing what you wanted all along. Imagine that someone you know achieves every dream and hits every goal they have. Years later, they get old and die. 2 years after that, how much do you care? About as much as everyone else will if you accomplish your goals and dreams. Do it for you.
So I think about death all the time because it's probably the central theme. It's probably the thing that I think the most about. And I think that influences how I see time and also how I think, how it influences agency. Like, what actions I'm willing to take despite the judgment of others. And so a lot of times, and it might be because I have more insecurity than everyone, that I think like, man, I want to do this thing. And then I hear all these other voices of reasons why I shouldn't do it, or why somebody else will say like, that's bad, or you're bad, or like, that's wrong, whatever. And so I think I've had to come up with a lot of these devices to get around my own insecurities, to take action despite those insecurities. And the biggest one that I think about is that it doesn't matter whether I achieve all of my goals or I don't achieve all of the goals. In 3 generations, I'll be forgotten. And the only people who were naysaying against me will also be dead. And so then it's like, just do it for me. And then when I wake up every day, there's only one voice I have to listen to.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is generate leads.
You need to get a list.
But I don't have a list, Alex.
You're damn straight you do. Number 1, I want you to go to your email account, to pull all the contacts that you have in there. Anybody that you've ever messaged or emailed. That becomes list 1. List 2 is I want you to go to every single social media profile that you have. Go to your social media profiles where you can direct message people. So if you have followers that you can DM, I want you to write down every single one of those people. List number 3, pull out your phone, look through your contacts, and I want you to export them. List 1 is all your email contacts. List 2 is all of your social contacts. And list 3 is all of your phone and private personal contacts. If you add all 3 of those together, you will have a shitload more leads than you thought you did. And you're like, wait, you're gonna ask me to contact these people? Slow down. Not yet, and we're not gonna do it in a really weird way. I'm gonna show you how to do it in a classy way. This is how I started every business I have and have people thank me for it. The second step is that you pick a platform. All right, so you have all these contacts, but you're gonna have to pick one platform that you're gonna start messaging or emailing them with. Start with the one that you have the most people on. So if you have the most Instagram people, or you have the most email contacts, or you have more people in your phone than any of those, start there. Step 3, but what do I say?
you personalize your message. So what you want to do is you want to use something you already know about the person or prospect in order to initiate reaching out to them. This is also just called being a human being. What you do is you take 30 seconds, you look at someone's profile and you say, oh, they have got this thing, we have something in common, and you can reach out to them with that as your primary message. So for example, you can be like, hey, saw you got a baby. Hey, saw you switch jobs. Hey, saw you move. Hey, you saw that movie last weekend. It doesn't matter. All you need to show is that you took the few seconds to actually not just blast some sort of message. Step 4, you reach out, and you reach out to 100 people every single day. So let's say you had 3,000 people between all your emails, all your phone contacts, and every single follower across all your social medias. It took you 20 years to send your first DM, and it'll take you 2 minutes to send the second one. Everything must be hard before it can be easy. So just get over the hump, send it, just something so you can realize that you won't die. Step 5, what do I say if they reply? You warm them up. I use a framework that I call ACA. You acknowledge, compliment, and you ask. For example, I can acknowledge and say, oh, so you have 2 kids. You're gonna compliment them about the thing. So it's like, wow, you have 2 kids. You must be a super mom. Working full-time and having 2 kids? When we go to ask, we're gonna tie our ask to the compliment we just gave them. Then we transition to whatever type of question that's gonna lead them to the service we sell. If I was selling weight loss, I'd be like, hey, so you're a super mom. How do you have time to eat right and work out? Wait a second. This sounds like selling. It's not, because we're talking humans. Step 6, invite their friends. When you're talking about this stuff, you're not going to sell them. This is huge. You're not going to solicit them. You asked a question, they're going to tell you stuff, and then it's going to be like, oh yeah, by the way, do you know anyone who's looking for X, Y, and Z? Because I'm opening up a few slots to help people do exactly that. You're just asking them if they know anybody. And since you're friends with them and since you're contacts, you're asking them for a favor. You're not asking them to buy from you. This should make you not feel weird about messaging people. If they say, hey, I'd like to find out more, now what they have done is they've transitioned from a lead to an engaged lead. A lead is somebody that you can contact. An engaged lead is someone who you can contact, comma, who has shown interest in the thing that you sell.
Rule number 6 is use social media.
Subscribers mean nothing.
Yep.
Followers on Instagram mean nothing. They're literally just a vanity metric now. And so the only thing that matters is click, retain, reward. That's it. And it doesn't matter what the platform is, they're all the same. Is like, did you get them to click? Did you get them to watch? And did you get them to come back?
Yeah.
That's it. And so the algorithm, like, it also, by doing that though, it makes it, there's never been a better time to start, because in the earlier days when it was subscriber based, it was basically an email list. Like, you build a subscriber base and then they push out your stuff to subscribers. But they don't do that anymore at all. And now it's just like they do lookalike audiences based on what they predict someone will like your thing or not. And so you could be a brand new account and have your first video do 10 million on the first upload ever, which I think in some ways is like a great equalizer, and it makes the content king.
Rule number 7 is be consistent.
Can you walk me through your stages of being willing to be consistent and then seeing it, how it's paying off for you now?
Yeah. So I'll give 3 maybe insights off of 6 years of podcasts. So I started July of 16 was my first podcast. And I think it was called like the Gym Secrets podcast, because that's what it was called then. And this is right as I was starting Gym Launch. And I had gym owners who were in my world. And so I wanted to just kind of create, this is my lattice work of thinking about how we grow gyms, right? Now, at that point, I already had 6 gyms and had sold them and had done 30 turnarounds. So like I had evidence that I knew what I was talking about, just for context. And so I talked about just varied, like, here's how you fix churn. Here's how you sell membership. Here's how you deal with like the spouse isn't there objection. Here's how you can get someone to commit to 3 days a week on your off hours so that you can increase the capacity of your facility. Like, here's how to arrange your lobby so that you can increase your sales percentage. Like, here's how you can weave in reviews and test. Like, I mean, just all the shit that you do to run a business. So number one, the reason I was able to stay consistent with it was because it was easy for me to do, because I always tried to interweave it in my normal work schedule. And so for me, it was like twice a week, I would go live in a Facebook group and I'd get questions from all the licensees of like whatever the issue was. And if I saw a recurring issue, that would be the topic that I would talk about. So it was very responsive for me, and I already knew the answer to the question, and I just would dive deep on it for X period of time. And sometimes I'd get riled up and I would do one impromptu because someone was like, man, all these leads are broke. And then I would just lose my shit on camera about how they were selling out of their own wallet and they should be trying to help people, blah, blah, blah. And so that was insight. Well, number one is that it had to be natural and easy for me to do to work within my current kind of constraints. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what led to the consistency. The two things that led to the breakthrough at year 4.5 was number one is I rebranded the podcast to The Game. Because you can imagine how many people are like, oh, you got to listen to this podcast called Gym's Secrets. Doesn't matter what the episode's about. You're not going to listen to it unless you own a gym. Like, it's just like, why would you listen to it? And the second one, or I guess this is insight. This is the third insight, but the second of the breakthroughs was that I started asking people to share it. That was it. Those are the three things that changed. But the actual format itself has not really changed. I stopped talking about gym specific, gym only in September of 19. So that was when I said, I'm not going to talk about gym stuff anymore. I'm just going to talk about general business. And then literally that month, like the next month it grew, and the next month it grew, and the next month it grew. And then when I started saying, hey, if you're enjoying this podcast, like I don't run ads, I don't do anything, like just share it with a friend. That was like the next increment of growth. But that was it. You know what I mean? I mean, I didn't make content anywhere else besides my podcast. And I stayed for 4.5 or whatever it was, 4.5 years at $2,000 a month.
Wow.
And I feel really confident that the content in there is still good.
Rule number 8 is create value.
The reason people buy is based on a prediction of future value. So they buy because they predict that they will get value from you later. What is the easiest way to get someone to predict they're going to get value from you after you buy? By giving them value before they buy. There's two ways that you can fundamentally get leads. You can, one, just make your offer to somebody and say, hey, I will wash your car for $100. Now you can put lots of razzle dazzle around it. That is a offer. Products or services that you exchange money for and the terms under which you do that exchange. And so this is directly from my first book, $100 Million Offers, or in Espanol, a core offer versus a lead magnet. What's the difference, right? Because fundamentally you'll have something that's valuable in both of these instances. The core offer is the thing you sell that makes you the most money. If you're like, which one is it? The one that makes you the most money, that's your core offer. If all of a sudden you start making more money on your lead magnet, guess what? That's actually your core offer. Lead magnet is the thing before the thing. Lead magnet is not a partial solution. All right, what a lot of people try and do is like, hey, I'm gonna give you the first 6 minutes of this 12-minute video and get the rest, click here, right? I think that's not the right way to do it. I think you lose trust. And that's literally the opposite of the objective of lead magnet. A lead magnet is a complete solution to a narrowly defined problem. If you're gonna do anything for a customer, there are many micro steps that happen to create a bigger solution. Let's say I paint houses. There's a lot of micro steps that have to happen in order for a house to get painted. First, you've got to size up the house. Then you have to give an estimate of whatever. Then you have to do the design component and you have to do the 3D visualization. And the bigger the thing is, the more steps there are. The idea is, okay, can I pick one of these very painful steps for my prospect and solve it for them at a massive discount to attract more people to want to do it with me? And I do such a good job at this massive discount that I increase the trust they have with me. And now they have one foot in the door. We're not giving away partially done work. We're giving complete work to a narrowly defined problem that once completed opens up the next problem.
Rule number 9 is surround yourself with greatness.
Do you have people in your life, though, who say, Alex, this is a bad idea. No, don't do this. Or, hey, maybe this way, like a kitchen cabinet, so to speak, to say, hey, man, like, do you have those people?
For sure.
Okay.
Well, there's a difference between like criticizing an idea or criticizing a way of living. So if someone's going to attack values, and that's like, I feel very strong about my values, but my ideas, loosely held. You know what I mean? This is my best.
Sure.
Like when we introduce an idea to the group, it's always like, this is my best bad idea. I'll say, love my idea for 5 seconds. And then I'll say it. And then it's like, oh, you can tear it apart. Right. But the growth, hey, I'd love to, grow my business. I'm like, cool, man. Like, you should do this. Then I see me a year later and I'm like, how'd that go? Like, oh, busy, man. A lot of stuff's been coming up. And I'm like, yeah, sure has. And they're like, I've been meaning to pick your brain. I'm like, I don't think so. I think I already said everything I thought last time. I had that happen multiple times. They're like, I'd love to pick your brain. I was like, you already did. And I already gave you what I thought and you haven't done it. So I was like, there's really no point in me repeating the same statements. Yeah. Do that and we can talk.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is just start.
I obviously am somebody who always wants to optimize how much work I do per unit of time. And so I was, there was definitely times earlier in my life I was really romanticized by these like very extensive morning routines and supplement rituals and like all this stuff of mental masturbation around the work that needed to be done. But when I looked at 2 hours later and nothing had actually gotten done, the moment you begin working is when your output per unit of time goes up. And so that makes beginning the single greatest hack that you can have for everything else that you do in work. Because the thing is, when you start working, you start getting in the mood to work, right? Like everything else is procrastinating around the work that you think you should do. But like I have noticed, for me at least, I have some big mental tasks, you know what I mean? Like big content piece or big thing that you need, like, it's going to take real mental effort. It takes me like 5 minutes of actually being in it to then get a little bit of a lay of the land to then get into it. But I used to take hours to delay to start the first 5 minutes. And so my time compression of when I thought I should start doing something and when I started doing it over time is just compressed to the point where it's like the moment I think that I need to start doing it, sometimes I just start it, because then what happens, I get this open loop. And so rather than complete work at because a lot of people are like, I want to complete it at this really nice clean point. Stop halfway through the sentence, because it'll drive you mad. I have shed friends every season of my life. My close circle has always been very, very small. Very, very small. Very, very small. Very small. Non-existent. I also feel like I grow really quickly because I don't hold on to things long. The moment something doesn't provide me value, I shed it. I think about my life in 3 to 5 year seasons. First, I was a high school womanizer for the most part. And then I was also like really deeply angry. I had high school friends that when I left high school, I basically stopped being in contact with them. And then I had my come to Jesus, where my dad was like, you suck as a human, you have a terrible reputation, maybe you should stop being who you are. Cleaned up my act, I stopped drinking nearly as much as I was. I started going to school and studying 12 hours a day, president of the fraternity, and that was my college season. And I had college friends. And then when I left college, I pretty much stopped being in contact with anyone that I went to college with. Most people suck at most things and aren't bound for greatness because of who they are and the choices that they're willing to make. The stories about friends leaving the hometown and no longer remembering where they're from is one that is told by society because society is the majority. The majority of people get left behind. If you look at the things that you want to get in life, there's a price for them. You don't buy everything you see in the mall. Why not? Because you don't want to pay the price. Just because you might think that a shirt or jacket is cool, just because you think an outcome is awesome, you might not be willing to make the trade. Winners and losers have the same goals. The goal doesn't make you unique. It's the willingness to pay the price that makes you unique. Because I'm like, everyone wants to be rich. One of the reasons that I cut people out sooner than most is because I do not like the labels that they speak over me. One of the big things with identity is the labels that we say about ourselves. I am X, I am impatient, I am angry, I am whatever, right? I am poor, I don't like saying it. People in your past have the identity that they know you as, and then they will speak and they will beat that label into you because you're not matching their pattern. Why have you changed? You are X, you are Y, and you're trying to not be that because you're doing something different than changing, you're growing. But they see it as change. And that's why the best response in the world to someone who says, hey, you've changed, is to say, yeah, you haven't. The amount you like or love someone is directly proportional to what you're willing to give up to maintain the relationship. For example, if there's a piece of car, right, and you work on it all the time, you might say, that guy must really love it because of how much time he puts into that thing. This guy must really love his country because he's willing to give his life for it. What are you willing to give in exchange to maintain the relationship? If you're not willing to give up basically anything to maintain the relationship, then how much do you love them? I think it's been a very helpful filter for me to say, not do I love my friends, but which friends do I love the most? Which friends am I willing to sacrifice the most to keep the relationship? And I am a big believer in utility. There is an exchange in every relationship. You get something and they get something back. People don't like the idea that relationships are transactional, but they are. Transactional just has a commercial vibe to it. But if we just think about it as from a behavior standpoint, you've got two things that can happen. A behavior is reinforced or it is punished. That's it. When you have exchanges, quite literally, with people, those exchanges are either reinforced or they're punished. Part of the strength of the relationship is how long you're willing to wait for the next time that relationship is reinforced. If you have a long history of positive experiences with a person, you're willing to wait a longer period of time if they're going through a breakup or they're having a hard time to keep the relationship going. But at some point, even if you've been friends with somebody for 10 years, if there's just not any positive reinforcement, at some point, you do cut it off. The people who we're surrounded with when we grow up, it's very unlikely, just from a population standpoint, that they're going to be great. Statistically, that they're going to be the top 1% or 0.1% is unlikely. So it would make sense that you change your friends over time. Why do people get so weird about keeping relationships that don't serve them? I think it's just because we have a societal story around it, that you're a bad friend. But I could also think of me being as a good friend to my next friend that I just made room for. There's gonna be a friend who's gonna move in to my spot on my buddy's calendar, who does wanna do fantasy football, who does wanna drink with him on Sundays. So it's not this like, all right, I'll go to the game with you, but I'm not drinking. Oh, dude, you're not gonna, come on, man. Because the other guy's like, yeah, shots all around. And they're gonna have a blast. They would better be served with people who want the same things as them. Just because I'm not seeing them anymore doesn't mean that I don't wish them well. But if someone only tells you the stories of when you got f***ed up and why you did that stupid thing, they're encouraging you and retelling you the story of who you used to be. And you want people around you who don't believe the lies you used to tell about yourself. The character trait shift is not a binary. It's how patient are you? How kind are you? How loyal are you? How honest are you? And so you want people who encourage you in the behaviors that you want to be like. And this is why like shedding identities is such a core part of entrepreneurship, is that you have to be willing to say, I am no longer this way. I will no longer behave in this way. And I don't accept that reality as truth. Many of the people I had around me, A, weren't willing to pay the price that I was willing to pay for the things that I wanted, but also wanted me to give them more than I was willing to. And so I'll give you a story that will paint me in a bad light, and that's fine. There was a teacher that I grew up with in high school, and he's the one who stayed with me after school for a year and worked out with me. 2 hours a day, and he taught me how to work out. I got in shape, got more confidence, better at school. From there, that snowballed into me getting into fitness. Huge catalyst snowball. Somebody heard that story and then found the teacher, and they linked us. He was like, hey man, I'm not asking for a lot. I would love to just have like a 2-hour call with you every week. I was like, a 2-hour call every week? I was like, I don't even talk to my mother that much. I don't talk to anybody that much. I talk to my wife, that's it. The value of the relationship was in the past. You may be like, Alex, you're a horrible person. And that's possible. Maybe I am. I was not willing to give 2 hours a week, 100 hours a year for the rest of my life to pay a debt for somebody who worked out with me. Because we only have so much juju, we only have so much time, we only have so much focus, so much energy that we can pour into things. And if you're not putting all your energy in one direction, it's scattered and then you don't move as fast. My closest friend, I spend 1 hour a week with every week. My closest friend, like clockwork. It's my highest priority meeting. It is something that brings me joy. And we get lots of exchange with one another. He's the one who helps me write my books, Dr. Kashi.
Dr. Kashi here.
I get a lot from that. Now, if I didn't get anything from that, over time, slow down the communication between us. I would make it every other week, once a month. If you slow down your communication cadence with someone, how frequently you see them and when you accept invitations, it naturally fizzles. But if it gets to a point where if someone's like so close that it would be obvious and a conversation needs to be had, I encourage you to just have it. You want to be a kind person. And the way you are kind is that you tell the truth. And you just be honest. And the easiest way that I can tell you to be honest is, when you talk about somebody behind their back, just say it to them. It's like, yeah, Sandra's been like all over the place lately. And she's like, I don't know, drinking a little bit too much. Sandra, you've been all over the place lately. You've been drinking a little bit too much. I'm just not sure if I want to associate with that right now. People just don't have the balls to do that. But if you do that, I promise you'll either have better relationships or you'll be done with this Mickey Mouse bullshit of not even being in a real relationship and not wanting to confront reality. Because you may have a shot at getting them to realize that they're not on the path that they wanted to be on. Because you were friends with them at some point. And so either your goals have changed or theirs have. If you listen to Kobe's interviews where he talks about his friends, he says very explicitly that he's willing to put everything on the altar for his dream. Now, some people make the argument that that's not, quote, healthy. The question that we're answering here is not how do we do healthy stuff? The question is how do we become the greatest? People will judge you on how you spend time, and their judgments are simply expressions that they would not spend their time the same way you do. Hey, you work a lot. And I could say, hey, you don't. To the same degree, it's like, you spend so much time with your kids. Right? If I say it like that, people are like, wait, no, I'm supposed to. It's only the supposed to that's the thing that gives all the emotional charge to these conversations. Otherwise, it's just observing reality. You can't expect to do the same thing everyone else is doing and then somehow achieve a different outcome. Once you have the vacuum of friends, because you'll probably have weeded people out, then the best thing to do is join communities. And then you'll make friends with people in those communities who have the same goals as you. And then if you crush it, because you understand that volume is the answer and time is the ingredient, you're going to rise in that community and you'll gain more status and you'll start hanging out with the people who are at the top of that community, and then you can leapfrog into other communities. It's just lunch tables on steroids. I've wanted to live a rare life, and so I will have to be surrounded by rare people, and rare people are by definition rare. They are not common. My hope is that the people that I meet now are trying to go all the way with me. I want to do epic shit. If I die and don't do epic shit, I will be bummed. How much am I willing to endure or sacrifice in order to maintain that relationship that I have with my dream? If I have many, many friends over different seasons, I'm totally cool with that. Thank you for that season. It was awesome. I don't believe things need to be forever to be good. And it's only the romantic story that we were told of friends for life, etc. If you die with one good friend or two good friends, like you've had a really good life. The skills we learn through education. Education comes from repeatedly doing things and learning from that experience. The information that we acquire to learn things comes in a lot of different forms now. The things that I actually invested in: workshops, books, seminars, coaching programs, one-on-one tutors, one-on-one mentorships, and Google. And I would say if I had to allocate amount of time spent learning things, Google was still by far the biggest one. It's funny, the other day I just set up this new widget for our site. I Googled it and I did it in 2 hours. And so I think that the amount of time that elapses between wanting to figure something out and doing something, the more advanced you get, shortens. I remember it took me 3 years to figure out how to build a landing page, and the day I decided to do it, it took me 4 hours. So it took me 3 years and then 4 hours to actually figure it out because I was avoiding the feeling of sucking. And so if you can confront sucking faster and just get over that idea that sucking is a bad thing, then I think you compress the time between you and the skills you want. The highest value I've gotten from was from one-on-one mentorship. It's from people who are far ahead of me that were willing to speak strategically into my life. And that's usually because those people can identify all three of those things. They can identify skill deficiencies, they can identify character trait deficiencies, and they can identify things that you believe that are true that aren't. So that is where I've gotten the most leverage in my life is on, and I've paid $20,000, $30,000 an hour to many, many different people just to have them speak into my life. Right underneath of that, as I was coming up, was joining masterminds. It was the getting around other people, because for me it was very lonely. And so just being around other people doing things, it A, got my competitive drive up because I always wanted to be the best. And seeing people that I didn't think were like better than me do something better than me gave me hope that I too could do it. I'd see somebody be like, I don't think they work harder than me. I don't think they've got like some genius brain. If they can do it, I can do it too. Also, when I was in those communities, they would also already have sifted through information for me because there's lots of information out there. The problem is that we have limited time. So it's no longer about, oh, information's free, you can find it anywhere. It's not free. It costs time to go find where it is. And so the idea is when you pay someone for information, it's not you're paying for the info, you're paying for the time it took them to sort through it to hand it for you. So you're cutting time. That's what you're saving when you exchange the money. That's the idea. And I think a lot of people don't get that. This is the actual order that I bought things. So the first thing that I did free interviews. So I tried to reach out to people. So I just said, hey, I'll show you the stuff that I've got. You want to share notes with me? I can drive out there. We can meet up. And that's how I learned a lot of my initial stuff. Usually it was older guys who were willing to take a young buck under their wing. If you're young, the advantage you have is that you're young. You can get a little bit of that goodwill from older guys that you might not normally get if they're the same age. People are like, well, the millionaire won't let me pick his brain. It's like, well, no. His time's more valuable than yours. Either pay them or you have to go down a rung. You have to keep going down until there's somebody that's either a peer or just slightly ahead of you who you can provide value to in a very narrow way. The next one I did is I joined a mastermind that was $10,000, and that was Sam Bakhtiari's mastermind, rest in peace. And he actually took enough of a liking to me that he said, why don't you just become my apprentice? And then he started paying me. So it was kind of weird. So I paid him and they paid me back. So I worked from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day with him, basically as his secretary. And I learned a ton. 3 months just like learning all these new terms, sales, copywriting, affiliate marketing. I learned all this stuff just from him because he was in that world. From there, I started my first gym and I stayed in that gym mastermind. During the time, I also bought a weekend workshop for Facebook ads. I learned Facebook ads in a small group of 10 people in 2 days. It was really valuable for me. Then I didn't really do anything for a couple of years. And then I went to Traffic and Conversion Summit. So that was an event. And I just learned more about marketing in general. I got introduced to different softwares that I then started using. And then from there, I kind of got more into the digital marketing world. So I joined some masterminds. In that world, I didn't do coaching programs myself. I actually ended up buying them for teammates. I think the coaching programs are really effective to teach methods. So if there's a method of acquisition you want to learn, whether it's like YouTube ads or Twitter ads or cold calling, whatever it is, joining a coaching program by other people trying to learn the same thing from somebody who's good is a great way to fast track your success. It just gives you the accountability. It helps you resolve problems faster. What you're buying is speed. It's not that you can't do it on your own. It's that you can do it faster with help. If you're trying to solve a specific problem, finding specific coaching programs is really good. If you've been stuck for a long time, I think that's where like masterminds and one-on-one mentorship is more valuable because you probably have a strategic issue more than a tactical problem. Warren Buffett once said, the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. When I look at the periods of my life in business where I've had huge amounts of growth in very short periods of time, I've gone through things that I call the season of no. And a season of no isn't forever, it's just for now. And sometimes seasons can be 3 months, sometimes seasons can be 3 years. The longest season of no that I had was a 3-year season. During that season of no, I said no to friends. I was a little bit extreme, but I also was running from absolute poverty and I had started seeing some success and I was so afraid of messing it up that I said no to alcohol. So I stopped drinking entirely. I stopped saying yes to any social events. I was in a paid group that I was paying like $35,000 a year to be in. and I didn't go to any of the events for 2 years, even though I paid for it. A lot of people think it hurts to say no to things, because it does, because you feel like you're rejecting other people, and most of us have been on the other side of that, and feeling rejected sucks. You have to kind of trick your brain into thinking that the no is actually a yes to the thing that matters most. Because the way that I've always thought about this was from like first principles perspective of, if I achieve this really big thing in 3 years or 5 years, all of these doors will be open for me. But if I allow these onesie, twosie, one-off conversations, one-off favors, one-off things to take me away from that one big thing, I know that 5 years from now, me not having the thing makes it far less likely that even those first doors are still open. They're only reaching out to me now because of the little bit of success that I've experienced, which I got here because of being focused on the one thing that mattered most. Gym Launch and the big $50 million whatever exit was built during a season of no. And all the people that I said no to still hit me up. But if I hadn't built that during a season of no, and I had said yes to all these little things, and I said no to the thing that mattered most, they might not be here still hitting me up. There's two scenarios that I play out in my head. One is that at the end of this, where you achieve something, 95% of people are gonna be even further behind you. And so you'll still have access to them. The people who were on par with you shoulder to shoulder, always mutual respect. You still also have access to them. If for some reason someone is offended that you said no to them earlier on, guess what? There are other people that in this future state will walk into your life. And so there's a lot of no's that I made early on that I can't even remember the door that probably permanently shut, because I have so many other doors that have opened for me. For me, a very core belief that has been, I think, intrinsic to at least the material success that we've experienced has been a belief that meaning is self-ascribed. So that there is no inherent meaning in the things that we do, or the actions we take, or the outcomes that happen, but only that which we ascribe to it. And so because of that, I feel like it's allowed me, to the point of what you were saying about like the amount of pain and the amount of suffering that you have to go through in order to achieve the things on the other side. I think it's allowed me to reframe a lot of the discomfort into, what if this just is how it always has been? Or what if this is actually amazing? And what if this is exactly what it should look like? And so I think a lot of times it's the discrepancy between our expectations and reality that shape the emotions that we have in response to any given situation, bad, good, etc. And so I think a lot of people can't control their state. And we deal with this with a lot of the portfolio companies. It's funny because I don't even necessarily want to get in this. I want to talk about like the business and what's the strategy and how we're going to execute the stuff. But there's a big percentage of time where they're stressed and they think there's something wrong with that. And so I feel like a lot of people feel like there's something wrong with experiencing human emotions. And so they are stressed and then think there's something wrong with them, or they are sad. And I know that this is the thing that the keyboards are, their fingers are right on top of it. It's my belief. It is contrarian. I accept that it's the beliefs we have about our emotions that are the things that drive us mad.
Facts.
And so somebody's sad, and then they tell themselves that they're bad because they're sad, or they're wrong to be sad, or they're a piece of shit because they're sad, rather than saying, isn't this a beautiful thought about the human existence? Like, if I could not be sad, then I would not experience joy. So like, if I say that I don't want to be sad anymore, then I would also have to give up joy. Am I willing to do that? No. Well, then this is just a part. Like, I can't say that I want sunny days if there are no rainy days. Like, we don't say weather is good or bad, it just is. And so I think to the same degree, the human experience is also that way too, at least how I define it. And so I think having that as my backbone frame in terms of my worldview, although contrarian, has helped me a lot in dealing with the things that often derail entrepreneurs on their path to getting what they want. And so for me, that's been very helpful. So from a contrarian standpoint of like belief, Peter Thiel's question, like what closely held beliefs do you have that most people don't agree with? That's one of them. There was a guy, friend of a friend, successful entrepreneur, and he got really bad cancer. Like super bad, really, really fast, right? And I think he lost his like trachea and some other stuff, and like they thought he was going to die. He ended up making it. And he was telling my friend, he was like, "Man, so grateful." And it was like you'd think it was like the whole I see life a different way now. It wasn't that. It was while he was going through it. And his reasoning was, how cool is it that I get to live this part of the human experience? He's like, so many people don't get to live this. Like, I get to know what it's like to have cancer. Like, so many people live their whole lives and then die not knowing what cancer was like. I get to know that. And I just thought about that as like a very interesting frame. It's like, whether it's bankruptcy, going to jail, like even the depths of human suffering, and some people who are still going through that trauma, I'm not saying that, like, I'm not justifying it.
it's just a frame on like being human is the rainy and the sunny days. Like you can't skip weather. And so I think like embracing the totality of the experience can give you gratitude for what feels locally like a low point. But most of the defining moments in our life, broken leg, then he doesn't have to go to war, right? When you expand the time horizon, those are the things that create us. And so again, I mean, I talk to my 85-year-old self a lot, which sounds really weird. But whenever I'm like complaining about something, one of the common things he'll ask me back is like, well, who do you want to be? And I'll be like, well, I want to be like this. And he's like, do you think that person would not go through hard times? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, it sounds like you're wishing for the outcome, but not willing to pay the price. He's like, are you willing to pay the price? And I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, well, this is what paying the price feels like. Embrace it. Because these will be the stories you tell. And so I think that's given me the ability to weather rainy days, sunny days. Because like there are a lot of those days in the entrepreneurial journey because that rocky cutscene is 5 years, not 30 seconds. And so I think you need as many of those tools as you can possibly put together in your tool belt to just keep going.
To get started, you have to sell something to someone. That's it. Like literally that's all. One avatar, one product, one channel. That's it. So you have one way of getting customers. You sell one thing to one specific type of person. That is all you need to do to get to 6 figures. To get to 7 figures, you need to learn how to do those 3 things, reliably, consistently, right? So it's, you know how to sell one product to one avatar and one channel in a consistent manner. So you start having predictive metrics on how you can acquire customers. So it's either I spend this amount of money on advertising and this is how many, calls I get booked. And then from that many calls, I get that many, sales, et cetera. If it's outbound, it's like I send this many emails or make this many calls or this many texts and then this many, reply back, this many schedule, this many show, this many close, et cetera. If you're running organic, it's I know that I need to have this many posts that I have to make across these different channels with call to actions that drive towards this page. For every 1,000 visitors on this page, I get Y opt-ins, you know what I mean? So each of these vehicles, or I have to hit my email list, once a week. And if I hit it once a week with a call to action again. So all these are the different ways you can get customers. You could also do affiliates, you can do referrals. There's many ways to do it. But the point is you pick one avatar, one channel, and one product. And then as soon as you can start predicting how many inputs it takes to get an output, then you get to 1 million, right? And at that point, you're, at 1, 2, 3 million-ish a year. 1 to 3, you have to build out your core team. So that's usually like the first 5 hires, first 5 to 10-ish that are, it depends on the ticket of the thing that's being sold. If you're selling $25,000 things versus $500 things, the team size is going to be different. But it's the core team at about 3 million. And that's the reason that we take companies on at 3 is usually because there's a core team, and at 3 million, there's product market fit. So they've demonstrated that people want this thing and they have enough support that we can take them from 3 to 10. 3 to 10, and this is interesting because this is a mistake a lot of people make at 3, and I can stop whenever you want me to cut the lines of the problems that come up. But the problems that come up at 3-ish are that people start getting cute, right? And they start saying, and here's what's difficult is that you get reinforced on the fact that the more you market, the more you sell, the more money you make, right? And it's true. And you can scale from there by doing more sales and more marketing. And that is what the vast majority of the industry will do because they got reinforced doing it early. The problem is that they switch the objectives. The objective of the first phase of business, which for me is like 0 to 3, is just to demonstrate product market fit and an acquisition channel that is profitable. That is the objective. Now, at this point, we transition objectives to increasing lifetime value per customer. So this is improving the customer experience, putting data tracking in place. If there's an ascension opportunity that makes sense, we need to build out that product or service line so that, and this is the big point, so that when we do choose to add another channel or expand on our current channel, we can do so more profitably, right? Where if you just sell a single product that might not have as much LTV as you would want, as you scale or put more in, your margins begin to compress. So you might go up to 10 million, but your margins have compressed over time. And then you get in this place where you have to keep selling to maintain your overhead, but you're not really taking enough home and you can't have enough free cash flow to grow the business. And so sometimes it's like you have to take the step back, fix the product, fix the customer experience, fix the service, fix the data, fix the infrastructure that everything's built on, probably hire and fire some people that you promoted a little bit too early that didn't have the experience because they're actually not running things that well. And then once we fix that stuff, then honestly, going from 3 to 10 usually almost happens on its own. Once we're at 10,
Then we go far more aggressively on the acquisition side, which is, the easiest moniker that I use is more, better, new. So we do more of what we're currently doing until we max that out. And then we do better of what we're currently doing. Is there any CRO opportunity? So conversion rate optimization. Can we switch this headline out? Can we change this lead magnet? Can we implement some of the best practices that we know to get, more people to show up if it's a service business, if it's a products business? Now, I only focus on service businesses, so lots of our stuff is over the phone. Can we change the video sales letters and the follow-up emails, things like that? All the improvements that can happen. And then different is, or new is, can we add a new channel to this? So we have 6 that we can choose from to get new customers. We can hit up our own lists. We can do cold outbound. We can do content. We can do paid ads. We can do affiliates, and we can do referrals. And so those are the only 6 ways to get new customers. We look at those 6 and say, of the skills that we currently have, which of these would make the most sense to add to it? And you can even go adding a new thing within a current. So if you're running paid ads, it's like going from Facebook to YouTube or going from Facebook to TikTok. And so there's, each one of those 6 squares has channels or media channels that you can, or platforms that you can tap into that give you new audiences. So that was a little bit of a crash course there, but that's what allows you to scale from 10 to 30 and beyond. At 30-ish, the founders typically will start feeling constrained because they are the juju behind the entire business.
I get asked about mindset a lot on podcasts. They're like, when you're building a business or you're building your career, there are stressors that come into play. How we manage the circumstances or the conditions that come to us dictates how our life turns out. Everybody has bad stuff happen. You probably believed and nodded your head like, yeah, everyone has stuff happen. And then we choose to make it bad or good. Imagine for a second, 2 children that are playing. One child tells the other child, your nose is really big, or you're fat. Interesting is that the child who hears it is unaffected and the child who says it is unaffected. They're like, you're fat. And he's like, huh. Parent comes in and overhears it. And she's like, oh my God. Takes the child that was called fat, comforts them, gives them the expectation that they should be upset, and then tells the other one that that was bad. And in a moment, there was something that is now traumatic that otherwise wouldn't have been. And so when we're kids, we walk into the world with no meaning. All we do is we observe. And then whatever the adults around us tell us and say, this means that, we take as fact. And it's not true. It's their interpretation of the world and we inherit them. And then we spend the rest of our life trying to undo and examine these beliefs that we have been told by people that we probably don't agree with. When something bothers you, pull it out and look at it and say, what happened and why is this bad? And what would it look like if it were good? And so the 2 tools that I use are time and volume. The volume example is thinking, okay, I'm in traffic. If this happened every day, would I be upset? If it happened every day, I'd probably expect it, which means that I would not be upset about it because it's just how things always are. If you want to make it positive, you say, well, what if every time I got in a car, normally it would take an hour and today it took 30? I'd be pretty excited about it. And so all we did is just change the volume on the circumstance to recalibrate the meaning that we're choosing to ascribe to it, good or bad. I like to think of circumstances a lot like weather, which is like you've got sunny days and you've got rainy days. And the problem, in my opinion, is that people, any day that it rains, they say is bad, and any day that's sunny, they say is good, when in reality, it just is. It's just the weather. Contrast is what create the quote good and bad, when in reality there's just a middle line and half of it's above and half of it's below. Then what we can do is artificially move the line in our minds by saying whatever this circumstance is, what would it look like if it were worse? And what would it look like if it were worse all the time? And if so, then maybe today's a good thing. The second frame that I like to use is time. 100 years out, but 10,000 years out, how much is this going to matter? The reason something affects you is because you have deemed it meaningful. You've said it matters. It's my worldview that nothing matters with a capital M. Like nothing matters in the universe. It doesn't matter. There's this statue of a head that's in the sands of Egypt. All right, and it's bigger than this whole room. And it's just the head. And it's worn out. And then inscripted along the forehead, it says, here lies, crazy name, who owned everything that the eye could see, the immortal so-and-so. And the only thing that was left was a worn out statue head that no one knew who he was. And it was 5,000 years old. If that guy who ruled the known world, to him, wealth probably mattered, right? But does it matter? No, probably not. I've relieved a lot of the pressure in my life so that I could make better decisions by zooming way out and thinking 10,000 years from now, will this matter? And if the answer is no, does it matter to me? And then if I can make the decision of like good or bad based on my new context that I created, then I can live life a lot easier. And so for me, that helped me decrease anxiety. It helped me decrease sadness around certain circumstances. And I'll give you the last example of this. So I had a cat named Bill, Chill Bill, rest in peace. Homie, love the cat. He died, it's like some freak heart thing or something. So he died in like 2 years. When he died, I was bummed. I was like, this sucks. But then I thought to myself, what if cats only normally lived 6 months? How stoked would I be that he lived 4 times the normal length of a normal cat? I was like, I'd probably be really stoked. I'd be like, dude, he lived a long life. I can't believe we had him this long. And all of a sudden, my perspective around the death completely changed. I was like, I was so grateful that I got to have him as long as I did. When you play with time and you play with volume, first off, we have to be aware of the levers of meaning that exist. And then once you're aware of them, you can start moving them in your favor and then looking at your current conditions through different lenses and say, what would this mean if it were amazing? What would the conditions have to be in order for this to be an awesome thing? And then all of a sudden, you just exit the game of happy, sad, and get to be your own game maker. At least that's what I try to do when I get upset. Look at it, pull it apart, think like, is this real? Is this true? If there's one that is the most important, I do think it's character traits, because the character traits are the wellspring that the other things are founded upon. If you don't have discipline, you'll never be able to actually study anything consistently to gain the skill. If you don't have focus and you're always building a new bridge every week about the new business that you're going to do, it doesn't matter how many skills you have and the beliefs you have about the world. Zuckerberg couldn't start 17 Facebooks. You can only start one and you have to stick with it. And so that takes focus. This is a really important point. If you have a trait, and this is where it's helpful to have communities of other people and ideally mentors, et cetera, who can speak in your life. And there's not even that many mentors who have the social awareness to say, I don't think you have integrity. I don't think you have focus. I don't think you have discipline. I don't think you have work ethic. I don't think you have drive. I don't think you have empathy. I don't think you have patience. Like these are virtues, these are character traits that people want to embody. And so you're like, how do you develop these traits? You don't develop a character trait. You act in accordance to what someone with that character trait would do. And you do it despite being uncomfortable doing it. So I'll give you an example. I was walking the other day with Leila. I was like, God, I'm so impatient. I was labeling myself as impatient. And I've probably, that's been something I've believed my whole life. I was like, yeah, I'm impatient. I'm an impatient person. I'm go, 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 go. But I also want to be a more patient person. I want to be wiser. I want to be more long-term thinking. And she said, you're not impatient. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, all I want is for all this stuff to go faster. And she's like, yeah, but you're not changing direction. All your actions are one of somebody who is patient. So the fact that you're uncomfortable being patient does not mean you are impatient. It means you're just patient. And so your internal feelings about what you're doing have nothing to do with the trait. And so you think about the reverse of that, where someone's like, I'm super disciplined, except they don't do anything that's disciplined. And you're like, no, you're not. They're like, no, but I feel good. Like, yeah, but you're not disciplined. You have no evidence to support that you were disciplined. The idea of building a character trait is not, do I have the character trait or do I not have the character trait? It's to what extent do I have the trait? And so if you can think about character traits that way, then you can start reverse engineering the character traits that you lack. And this is really hard because one of the things that I see with entrepreneurs all the time is that what will happen is that they will feel bad about something and then they will want to change something in their business to make themselves feel better. They take those emotions and then they try and feel better by erratic behavior that's non-directional, and then they break their original strategy. The more willing you are to endure discomfort for an extended period of time based on a decision that you made in the past because you know it's better for your future, means you are more patient. Character traits, even more than any of them, are a pursuit of perfection that we will never attain. But in understanding it that way, you can see it as a journey of trying to stack up wins in your favor. You do the thing, and you do it so many times that at some point you look back and you realize, you know what? I do this most of the time. I guess I do own this trait. And then you can label yourself as a patient man, a wise man, a kind man. And I think in doing that, you'll ultimately tap into the wellspring that allows you to grow beyond your dreams. This one was about figuring out which thing to do. This is about figuring out what to do. So when you're deciding which thing to do, this is a clear case of lack of strategy, all right? Now, strategy is a big, fluffy, amorphous word that gets tossed around a lot and no one knows what the it means, but it's probably important. And in my opinion, it is the most important. But I'm gonna give you a different definition for this to make it a little bit more useful, okay? Strategy is just prioritizing. That's all it is. Like whenever you hear someone say, we have to figure out our strategy, it just means we have to figure out our priorities. That's all it means. And in layman's terms, it's what's gonna get us the most bang for the buck. If you want the fancy definition that I have, it's how you choose to allocate resources that are limited against unlimited options. That is strategy. And the tough part about this, about strategy in general, is that when you're looking here, you have all these options. Strategy is figuring out, actually there's one that's right here that takes us off the page. Because the most costly thing in business isn't just the unknowns, but it's the unknown unknowns, as in the things that you didn't even know you could pick from. as a quick, pro tip for everybody, if you've got stuff that people ask you to do for them because you're good at it, maybe you're good at tech. It's like, can you help me set up my like Wi-Fi and stuff, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that means you're solving problems. You can charge, like what people ask you to do as a favor is an indication of the things that you can charge for later, right? So I had all these people who were asking me, not all these, a handful of people who would ask me for programs and stuff. And so what I did was during my last year of consulting, I started something called the Free Training Project. And so the Free Training Project was, I would charge $500 to $1,000, but I wouldn't charge it. They had to donate that to the charity of their choice in exchange to work with me, right? And so that way I wanted people to value it, but they weren't paying me directly. So they'd get a write-off. They felt good. I had a ton of goodwill also in the marketplace too, because I was like, I'm doing all this stuff for charity. I got all these people reaching out to me like, this is so cool, blah, 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 right? And so after a year of doing that, I had probably 12 really good like great before and after pictures that I had collected from my clients. And I told them that was part of the deal. I was like, you have to donate it. I would like to do this for real later, but you have to let me use your testimonial. And they were like, that's fine. So once I had that, I had those first, 10, 12 customers who had great before and after pictures. I transitioned many of those customers, said, hey, I'm going to do this full time now. Are you comfortable paying the same amount you were paying to charity, except just making it charity of Alex because Alex can't eat either? And that was actually how I transitioned from not-for-profit or donating everything. And I didn't even set up the entity. I just told them to literally donate it and send me the screenshot. I didn't even do anything like that. And so I didn't have a website. All I had was an LLC and a PayPal account. So like for everybody's like, I don't know how to start a business. I was like, you literally just need a bank account and a way to process money. That is it. Like 2 things. And you can Google how to figure it out. If you can't figure it out from Google, entrepreneurship might not be for you. All right. But you think about, there's 30 million businesses in the United States. 30 million other people have figured this out, which means you can too. So bank account, payment processing, make the first 10 free or some sort of charitable thing so that people don't feel weird or you don't feel weird about selling, et cetera. After you have it, after you're providing this service to people, you can transition people from free service to paid service. And if they don't want to start paying you, then that gives you insight as to either you suck, right? Or they suck, which is also possible too. But either way, a certain percentage of those people will continue to stay and pay you. And now you have income. Now, you can also ask those people for referrals, which is exactly what I did. So I think half that business came in just from, the initial ones came in from friends and family and me posting. And so I'll close the loop on what I said earlier. A year later, after I had those testimonials, I made a public post being like, hey, I've got this thing now. I made a website, that was my big announcement. I made a website. I still have the post. I found it. It's 2013. I was like, I made a website and I am now open for business. And so if you would like, training stuff, let me know. This is what I'm doing now. And I had some testimonials and go check out the site, whatever. And so from there, I was able to get, I think, about 20 guys who were willing to let me do just like almost bodybuilding type stuff. Cause I was kind of like I was powerlifting bodybuilder back then. And so I want to say I got 20 guys at $200 a month. And so I was making $4,000 a month from those people. And it took me 4 hours every Saturday to do the fulfillment.
What was the fulfillment?
I would just update their training programs and send them nutrition, update their macros, updated meal plans, and then new workout split for the week, et cetera. And then everyone had my cell phone and I would just text them the new stuff. And if they had any questions, they could hit me up. It was a very simple business. And so that's what I did. It was just one-on-one online. And it only took me 4 hours on Saturday morning. And to show you what kind of person I am, I hated it. Even though I loved fitness, I hated having to do the same thing every day, on the delivery side. So I ended up having the genius idea of saying, oh, I need to own a gym because then I'll be a business owner. I'm really just self-employed right now. And so that's what got me to start my gym rather than probably doing the wiser decision and saying, okay, this costs you 4 hours a week and you're making $4,000 a month. Maybe you should do this for 40 hours a week.
How can somebody listening to this become more of a long-term thinker intentionally?
You have to figure out what to do in the meantime. Patience isn't actually active. And this is a big finding for me, was that people are like, be patient. It's a terrible directive because no one knows what to do when you say be patient. Right now, I'm being patient for every other thing in my entire life except for this podcast because time is elapsing
and other things are going in progress. I have long-term 10-year goals that right now I'm being patient for by being on this podcast with you. And so I think what a lot of people need to do is figure out the games they need to play in the meantime. And so experts at things don't really have more impulse control. I think it's a fallacy. They figure out more ways to win in the meantime. So if you've been on a treadmill and you see 30 minutes, right? And then you're like, you get 5 minutes in and you're like, okay, only 5 more 5-minute chunks, right? That is, in a nutshell, what an expert does when they approach a project. They don't try and think I'm going to run 26 miles, right? If they're running the marathon, they say, how do I break this into a chunk that I can manage, right? And then what they do is they create more ways to win. And so in those 2 years, it wasn't like I just sat and suffered for 2 years and then the book's going to come out, right? I would have many victories along the way that would happen. It's like, oh, we just destructed this chapter. I just rewrote it again and it's killer. Or I just got this beautiful visual that just completely explains this thing with three shapes. And it just, it explains the whole concept, right? And so you get these little mini reinforcers, and then you have the long loop of reinforcement that is, for me, that I have now learned over and over again, is that the more time I put into something, not necessarily longer, but the more time I put into something, the fact that time elapses is secondary. The more time I put into something, the better it is. And what happens too is when you're working on projects, you're working on anything, is that if you work on it over a longer period of time, you have more time for creative solutions to come to you to the problems that you're thinking through. Like the best launch I ever did in my life so far was actually of Prestige Labs, my supplement company. And it was because we actually planned it for a year. Mm-hmm. Other companies and other projects, because I was impatient, was like, let's do this in 12 weeks, right? And I can quote the entrepreneurs, you got to break, move, you got to, what I mean? I do all that. But you know what worked really well? When we had thought through every contingency and every scenario, and we were completely staffed up, and we had done a beta test, and we had done a 5 times bigger beta test, and we had ran processing through, we made sure payouts were on time, we made sure we had inventory tracking that was automated, we made sure that we had the right ratio between customer, service people and the number of tickets that were going to get bought. We knew we had supply chain lined up so that we could ramp up at a 10x or 20x month over month type of scaling, because we're going to thousands of locations, right? Like, that doesn't happen in a week. And so like great triumph takes great sacrifice. It just is what it is. Like there's a quote in B.F. Skinner, who's a behavioral psychologist, and he starts one of his books. He says, many variables exist, and therefore many variables must be studied. And it's just about the context of human behavior. And so a lot of people want to make these idioms or these truisms that are like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like, but human behavior has a lot of variables. And so everyone wants to have the shortcut. And he just was like, many variables must be studied. It's just like, you can't shortcut the work. The work has to be done. Deficits occur when we speak desires, right? And so I love this statement. A desire is a contract we make with ourselves to be unhappy until we get what we want. And so whenever we state a desire, like I want this amount of money, I want whatever, you literally sign a contract that says like, I won't be unhappy until that happens, right? And so like I had this thing earlier on where I was like, I want to have meaning. I want to have great meaning in my life. And I was talking to a guy who made a lot more money than me, because I asked him, I said, how do you create and destroy meaning in your work? That was the question I asked him on a podcast. And he was like, why do you think life needs to be meaningful? And it was the same exact thing as the happiness versus like the meaning thing, where it's like, I say life has to be meaningful, and therefore everything that I'm doing, like I create this expectation of life. Whereas if life just is, it just is. And it's the only way that you can actually be there. It's just pure acceptance, right? Which is why like the whole like shoulds of like, we should work, we should have balance, we should X. It's like, I believe marriage is a compromise. Like these are just statements of belief that are casting expectations out in the world that are just bound to be untrue at some point and then create dissonance. And so it's like, I believe marriage is marriage, and I believe my marriage is my marriage, and I believe your marriage is your marriage. And like, I believe that I can work 24 hours a day if I want to. And that is all, period. Not, and it's bad or, and it's good. And there's no judgment on it. It just is. And so like, if I get dopamine secreted in my brain when I start working, cool. Like, and I will optimize for dopamine. And if I die, I know that in 1,000 generations, nothing I do anyways is going to matter. So who cares? Like, that's like the opening thing in my book is like, there are no rules. Like we live in this shoulds and have tos and like happiness. Everyone talks about it. And it's just like, everyone is unhappy because they say they want to be happy, rather than being like, accepting like, fuck happiness. Like I just am, period. And then like, I don't need to judge the it just is. What I see happen all the time with entrepreneurs, especially when they apply to acquisition.com, you know, they've got $1 million in profit. Maybe it's the bare minimum for us to consider for investment. And they're like, here's my idea for how I want to expand and how I want your help. I want to start all these new product lines because I've already saturated my market because I'm spending $50,000 in Facebook ads and I can't spend any more than I currently am. Otherwise I lose the profitability of the ads. So I'm going to just start selling more and different offers and add massive complexity to my business that only makes $3 million top line per year. That is a mistake. And in this video, I'm going to walk through why. And the reason this is so important is because many people hit this first plateau and then think, oh, I should start a new business. Oh, I should start a new product line. When really they need to confront the problem ahead, which is they don't know how to get more customers within their current niche or space. Your market isn't capped. Your mindset is capped. Number one, from the marketing perspective, you have your method, which is the biggest thing you do. It's running paid ads. It's making content. It's doing outreach. It's getting referrals. It's getting affiliates. Those are the methods that you do to get customers. Underneath of that, you've got the platforms that you do that method on. You've got Facebook, you've got phones, email, Hulu, YouTube, you've got Google Ads. Underneath of that, you've got the media on the platform. So if I'm on Instagram, I can go Instagram DMs, I can go Instagram stories, I can go Instagram posts, I can go Instagram reels. I have all these different media within the platform. One level below that is how much volume am I doing within that media? Am I posting one story a day, one story a week, multiple stories a day, multiple posts a day? So like that chiropractor agency, if there are 100 other agencies that market to chiropractors and they're all marketing on Facebook, then you could probably add up all of the ad spend of every one of those agencies together. And that just gives you an idea of how much there is available in terms of number of new clients per month that all of them together are selling just on Facebook ads. Rewind real quick. If you're trying to pick what market you're going to go in, I talk about this in my book, $100 Million Offers. There's 4 things I want to look at. Number 1, are they in pain? Am I actually solving a problem for someone? Number 2, are they easy to find? Because if I can't find them, I can't sell them, right? Number 3, do they have the money to spend in order to buy my thing? Because if I'm trying to sell to broke people, it's probably not going to be a good idea. Number 4, are they growing? I don't want to be selling to newspapers. I want to be selling to something like old people there's more of them every single day that are retiring. If I have a market that checks all 4 of those boxes, then I know I'm at least in a good opportunity. Now, once I have that in place and I looked at the 4 variables that I talked about earlier, can I do a new method? Can I do it on a new platform? Can I expand to multiple types of media within the platform I'm currently on? Can I increase the volume that I'm currently doing in the mediums that I have? These are the things you could do immediately to get more customers, get more leads today.
What other ways would you say, if your life sucks, the easiest thing is to change your environment? What other ways could someone do that?
I mean, the environment is, like, you know, this is I'm going to tangent and I'm going to come back. So if you've ever heard somebody say like, man, I hate Cincinnati. Cincinnati sucks, right? Or they go some city and like they go there for 2 days and they make a judgment across the entire city, right? But it's like, okay, let's go really deep. You ate at 3 restaurants and you saw 7 total people in Cincinnati. Does Cincinnati suck, or do the 2 restaurants that you went to or the 7 people that you were with are they not that cool? Well, it's so easy to just move like 2 miles down the street. It's the same reason people do staycations. It's like you don't even need to change cities. You can be in the same city and still change the environment. Like just moving out of your mom's basement, you know what I mean? And just going into another place with 4 guys can change the environment. And so like that's the thing that to me was so telling on this was so heroin addiction, super addicting. I'll put it that way. And when a bunch of soldiers came back from Vietnam, they had been addicted. I don't know if you've heard of this, right? 25% of soldiers who went to Vietnam tried heroin. It was like an insane statistic. And in the US, 90% of heroin addicts who go to clinics relapse. So they have a 10% long-term success rate. Tough. The stats are completely reversed from people who got addicted or did heroin in Vietnam and then came back to the US, which then you could draw the line, which is, it's better to change your environment than to even do anything else, because what happens is you eliminate all the triggers and cues that are associated with the habit that you're trying to destroy.
Do you see that the American government was absolutely concerned that there was going to be an epidemic?
Yeah.
They were adamant that all of these soldiers were going to come home and they were going to be these veterans that were all addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
Wild.
And there are, for sure, but so much proportion less than their quote should be.
Yep.
Because the problem with the current system and like, for anyone who's listening, you can still extrapolate the principle or the concept. People are in the environment that they're addicted. They change environments and they go to a clinic. They change the environment, they change their behavior. And then they go back to the same environment and their behavior changes yet again to match the environment. And so it's like, if you want to change your actions, the easiest thing you can do is just change the environment. Because if you can do that, a lot of times, a lot of the negative things you have, you just don't get triggered. You don't get the cue for the behavior. It just gets extinguished. If you love the actual doing of the business, the thing you do, the product or service you deliver, that is your art, then I would say start with the path of the artist. And if you're good, because if you really do love it, you should be able to beat other people who don't love it. And so you should naturally, through word of mouth, be able to get more demand than you have supply of time. At that point, you'll have to start making the decision. Am I gonna go hybrid or am I gonna go all the way entrepreneur? If you're starting out right now and you're watching these videos and you just love entrepreneurship in general and you don't really care what you sell, you just wanna make money, then you probably are more the entrepreneur path. You just wanna hustle, you wanna figure out needs in the marketplace, figure out stuff that people are buying, connect the two dots, build the organization around it, put an operator in charge, and then let it run and make cash flow. That's the entrepreneur path. The middle path, the hybrid path, is usually someone who starts as an artist and then becomes that because they still want to build the big enterprise, but they don't want to sacrifice the thing they love the most, which is actually building the product. This little product thing, as a side note, could also be marketing. It could also be finance. If you like a certain component of the business, you can own that component of the business and have someone build it around you. You could just be the guy who loves fundraising and you just love raising funds and that's how you build your business and you get everybody else around you to run it. You will still leave your thumbprint on different aspects and be more heavily involved in different departments, the ones that you love the most. But at this point, you do it by choice rather than do it by obligation. Do I love the thing or do I love the business of doing the thing and then walking that path down? And the best news is you can always change your mind later. Innovation is saying no to 1,000 other good ideas. There's the opportunistic yeses and nos that we have to make. So the better and better your business gets, the more attractive the opportunities that will present themselves. And so you may have this marketing agency, for example, and it's doing well, but then all of a sudden one of your clients is like, hey man, how about I give you equity in my business and you keep doing the marketing for me? And then you start thinking to yourself, well yeah, because I'm gonna make more on this deal, I should do this deal. But the thing is there's so much inefficiency in this one-off or onesie-twosie relationship that you lose on the main thing. If you build this massive agency, that's the thing that everyone's gonna come to you for. If you have this weird thing with 2 or 3 odd appendages from these one-off deals, I'll tell you as an investor, when I see that, I see an undisciplined entrepreneur. I see someone who cannot focus on the thing that matters most. And that's why when we talk about leverage in terms of getting more for what you put in, that's why being so selective on the one thing that matters most is so important. Because most people don't achieve the success they want because they either don't do the thing that matters most enough times, they don't do it for long enough, or they're doing the wrong thing altogether. Most plans taken to their natural end are actually pretty good. So even if you had a local business that was a dry cleaning business, if you did it for 40 years and never got distracted, I promise you that 1, you'd have a pretty good dry cleaning business. 2, you'd probably have multiple locations, and 3, you might have been able to scale nationwide. I think like people have 2 sets of resources, right, that they allocate. So they've got time and they've got money.
Yeah.
And so if you look at someone's bank statement and you look at their calendar, you know what their life is. And you can also predict where their life is going to be in X amount of years, right? And so if someone wants to change what their life is going to look like, you have to reallocate where you're investing the resources that you have. And so from a time perspective, people who are poor, in my opinion, spend a lot of time not doing stuff. And that sounds terrible to say, but like at the base level, they're distracted, they're
not doing the right
procrastinating.
stuff.
Right. Well, I would even say not doing anything.
Just distracting them,
Right.
playing
Just
video games,
Netflix, et cetera, all that stuff, right? So there's like the basis, like they don't do anything. They're purely distracting themselves from their current state, which is hard because it's hard to confront reality. If you're like not happy, it's easier to just distract yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the level above that is you've got people who are operating, they are working every day, but they're operating in low leverage opportunities, right? So they're doing things that do not give them a lot of return on their time, right? And so it's like I could work, it doesn't matter how many hours I work at McDonald's, like it's very, very difficult to become wealthy there, right? It's just near impossible, right? Mm-hmm. Versus like you could buy a building for $10 million and then sell it to somebody else for $11 million, just get the contract and make $1 million on the exchange. Super high leverage, right? From a time perspective, which is crazy for somebody who doesn't have money to even contemplate something like that. But the only way that happened, and that required no money, is skill, right? And so like that's an example of like it didn't require money to make that money. That's skill that's required to do that. And so first is the time, right? People are not doing stuff with the time that they have, or they're doing low leverage activities with the time they have. And then they're not trying to increase their output per unit time, which means investing in their skill set. So like one of the easiest ways to gain leverage on your time, and when I say leverage, just for everybody, like leverage is the difference between inputs and outputs in a system. So, Archimedes said, if you give me a lever long enough, I can move the world. And so to the same degree, if you have enough skills, you can do anything. right? And so skills give you leverage on your time. So you get more out of each unit of time. So if I'm a master cold caller, I will get more sales and calls booked for the same unit of time than somebody who sucks at it. Same time, more output, right?
But because they developed a skill at a masterful level.
100%.
Yeah.
And so when people are allocating their time, they're not by percentage, they're kind of like consuming their time rather than investing their time. So they're either doing nothing or they're consuming the time rather than putting time into getting higher returns on their time, which is education, right? And so education you can have from like the conceptual learnings, watching stuff like this, or the actual doing, right? And so you learn
taking
more
action,
100%.
Failing, messing up, feeling like an embarrassment in the actions. Yeah.
The first 1,000 cold calls you make, the first 1,000 cold emails you do, the first 1,000 doors you knock on, the first 1,000, you'll learn more from that than you'll learn from every single book you read up to that point on the concept. You'll learn, right? And so people don't allocate nearly enough time to that in the beginning. You are not successful in my eyes because whenever you see some outcome, you stop the activities, which means you don't have the trait of consistency. I was like, the reason you aren't where you want to be is because you can't do things repeatedly. And so most people can't do one thing over and over again. You need to be able to do the doing without seeing the result of your doing. And you have to keep doing it. And if you can keep doing things independent, and this is both ways, if it goes really well, you keep doing the thing that got you there. And if it's not going well, yet, you keep doing the thing so that you get good enough that one day it will. And that's the shift that most people don't make. And I think that's why most people just stay poor. And the reality is that if you can commit to the actions and the behaviors and the traits that you will grow through doing, then at the end of this process, a decade later, you will be the type of person who can do something for a long period of time and wait. And I promise you that if you have that trait, money will never be a constraint in your life. And this is from Atomic Habits. Every winner and every loser have the same goals. So when you measure yourself by having this external thing, and people are like, set goals. Everyone wants to be rich. Everyone wants to have a six-pack. Your goals don't make you unique. It's the activities that you do that make you unique. The goal of the winner is to commit to the activities. The goal of the loser is to commit to the goal. 52% of 18-year-olds, high school seniors, think they're going to be millionaires by 25. The world is going to be shook. Many of you will fail. And that's because most of you have the same goal. 52% you think you're going to be a millionaire, right? That's just the math. But only a small percentage will, because if you want to be a millionaire, you're not going to focus on making $1 million. You're going to focus on the stuff that makes $1 million. And so when you can divorce the activities from the outcome, then you can focus on the doing, which whether your income does this over that period of time, your self-esteem remains the same because you're committing to what you can control. If you can make that shift, it will change your life. So I started making podcasts 6 years ago. I committed to that process. When I signed on with a YouTube vendor a few years ago, on the first call, I said, I'd like to have this channel be something in 5 to 10 years. I was like, we'll look at it then and see if it was worth continuing to do. I was like, but I'm in for a decade. And he stopped me afterwards. He was like, I've literally never had a client say that to me, ever. He's like, they're all like, how can I get leads in the first 90 days from YouTube? And like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, if we're making progress, I'm good. I will commit to that. I think that if you can think that way, you will get what you want. And then people will ask you a decade from now, man, how did you have this overnight success and blah, 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 blah. And aren't you like, don't the followers and the fans, like, how does it not get to your head? And you're like, because it was never the goal. And so I feel just as good at year 1 as I do at year 8, because the activities that I committed to remain the same. If you can think that way and you can shift your perspective, it'll decrease your emotional ups and downs. And I think we all need ways to decrease our emotional ups and downs in the game of business, because like we need to have second lives and third lives and fourth lives. And the way to do that is to not put your life, your game playing life, in something that you can't control, but putting all your game playing life in the things you can. The biggest issue that most people have is they don't have the ability to discern what their missing link is or what their next step is. If you think about the theory of constraints, which is that a system will grow until it's constrained. And so what happens is most people add potential to a system, but they don't actually increase the throughput of the system. So for example, if I had a bridge, right, and it has a weak link in the bridge, or let's say a chain, is probably simpler. So if you have a chain and you have to pull two things, the amount of force that you can put on the chain is just predicated based on the weakest link. And so what happens is that people reinforce a strong link and not the weak link in the chain. And so they add potential to the chain, but they don't actually add any more strength that can be pulled. And so if you think about the amount of money that you're trying to make as amount of money that you're literally trying to pull towards you, that weak link is going to be the skill deficiency that you have. And so most people solve problems that aren't really there.
and they spend a lot of their time reinforcing skills that they enjoy, but that's not their deficiency. And so that's why like the entrepreneurship thing is you have to be a jack of all trades, master of none. You have to be good enough to get the thing across the finish line to pull the money towards you. You don't have to have the strongest link. You just need all of the links to be strong enough. And so I think most people aren't good at assessing their own deficiencies. And so if the follow-up question is, how do you assess deficiencies, right? How do you know what's missing? The question is, what are the revenue generating activities within a business? How can I get myself closer to those revenue generating activities? And so you can look at product as a revenue generating activity. You can look at sales as a revenue generating activity. You can look at marketing as a revenue generating activity. And so if you think about those as kind of the three core pillars of what businessing is, and then you have back of house, right? You've got finance, you've got IT, you've got the other pieces. But the people who ascend even in the back office know how to generate revenue and bottom line for their division. So for example, my CFO, Suzanne Chiflet, she led a $15 billion acquisition, $5 billion, a $1 billion. The last company she was at was $750 million. She's been $1 to $100 million 2 times. So like she's been there. And the first thing she did on our first interview, she was like, "Oh, you won't have to pay for me." I was like, and she's paid very well. And she's like, "You don't have to pay for me." She's like, I'll save more than what you're ever going to pay me. Just first 6 months, I'll save you that. And I was like, oh, cool. And so smart people know how to do that. Like an intelligent, video editor is going to come and say, dude, I can 10x the amount of views that you're getting on this thing, because he's going to tie himself to marketing. A good product person is going to say, I can decrease our churn, which is going to increase your LTV. I'm going to be able to get more people to ascend because they have a higher NPS score and they're more likely to want to keep buying from us. So they have to just figure out a way to tie whatever the thing, if they're really passionate about something, by all means, go all in on it. If you're IT, then you're thinking, how can I decrease page load times? How can I get conversion rates up? You start getting into the CRO side. How can I organize the data in such a way that the CEO can make better decisions? And we have real-time reporting against all the sales guys so we can optimize our funnels towards the best converting guys, right? All aspects of the business can make more money, but people don't think about it through that lens. So the first thing is, how do I tie what I do every day to making more money in the business? You connect that dot and then you improve that connection.
The thing is your decision-making process is ultimately the most valuable thing that you have, right? It's what makes you, it's your picker, right? It makes you decide what way to go, who you're going to marry, what business opportunity you're going to pursue, how you're going to price, how you're going to start marketing, what you're going to learn first, who you're going to, get mentoring from, all of these things, who you're going to become friends with. Like, all of these are decisions, right? And, you can take the money away from a billionaire and then they can recreate it again. Elon Musk, lost it and then gained it all back, right? And so the thing is the decision making is what ultimately fuels all these things. And the hardest part about entrepreneurship, and really, I think almost life in general, is that you can make the right decision and have the wrong outcome. And I think, and let me give you a couple examples of this. So, for example, you may say, you know what? I listen to Warren Buffett. I think he's a good investor, and so he says, I wouldn't touch Bitcoin, right? And I hear that, and I'm like, man, well, he knows a little bit more about it than I do. But his argument was simple. It is speculative, which means I'm buying it not because it has intrinsic value, but only because I believe that someone else will buy it for more later, right? That's all it is. He only believes in investing in things that have intrinsic value and also produce, right? So they actually have production. So like a business you buy, you still own the business at the end, and then it spits out production, which would be profit or crops or whatever, right? And so that's the basic difference, right? And so the thing is that you can make the right decision. So for example, I chose not to buy Bitcoin 2 years ago or whatever, and now the amount of money that it would have been worth is a lot more. Was the decision wrong, or was it that the outcome did not match the quality of the decision? And so let me explain. Let me unpack this. If you are going to change the way you make decisions because a decision that you made in the past that was probably a good decision ended up bad, you have to apply the same decision-making context or framework to everything else. All right, so let me explain. So if I say I'm now going to be a speculator, right? I'm going to be someone who buys things with the hopes of selling them later for more, even though the thing itself doesn't have more value, right? If I choose to start making those types of decisions, then I have to think about all the other investments I would have made and lost money on as a result of that decision-making framework. And the place that I heard this first was Ray Dalio in Principles. So he's one of the richest men in the world, an investor as well. And he said, one of the hardest things is passing up on an opportunity and then seeing it, do really, really well, right? He's like, but the thing is I have to think to myself, if I were to use the decision-making framework that would have made that deal a winner, then I'd have to apply that same framework to all of these other businesses or situations that would have been losers. And my net of having that different decision-making framework would ultimately cause me to lose. And so this has been one of the most powerful concepts for me as an entrepreneur, because what it does is it allows me to separate the outcome from the quality of the decision. Why was it that I did these things, right? And I can't even tell you, like, so for example, you know, actually I won't even give that one, but like there are decisions that I made when I was younger that ended up being, you know, poor later. But when I thought back about why I made the decision, I would make the same decision today. So it's not fair for me to say, well, I wouldn't have made the same call now. But you can't use the information that you have today to make the decision that you would have made in the past, because then it means that you were a different person because you're not using information that you have access to, right? And so claiming that this decision that I did in the past that didn't end up well, you know, working out in my favor, was the wrong call can just be really poisonous, and it may not be true. Now, if you make a mistake because you had poor calculations and you repeat the same mistake over and over again, then you should consider looking at your decision-making calculus and see if you need to tweak some things, right? But for me, this has been one of the hardest learned lessons, and emotionally one of the most trying, is looking at decisions I've made, looking at the outcome, and being able to separate, was this a good decision independent of the outcome? And I'll wrap this up with just a quick example to show you. If you had a perfect baseball swing, right? You're just an amazing, you know, batter, right? If someone gets up there and they're the best batter in the world and they strike out, is it because their swing is horrible? Is it because they don't have the right decision-making about how they swing at pitches or how they pick the pitches? Probably not. He's probably a really good batter, right? Because I just said he's the best. But it still means he's going to strike out, and it still means he's going to get out and hit pop flies and all that kind of stuff. But he's going to be an amazing batter with a 350 average or whatever, and still 2 out of 3 times he's going to strike out, or basically, you know, not get on base, get out. And so when I think about that, like, you can be the best at this thing and still only be right a certain percentage of the time, right? And so rather than that batter striking out once and saying, I need to change my swing, and then getting back up there and striking out again and be like, I need to change my swing, and always resetting the baseline, instead being like, I understand that if I apply this swing to enough at-bats, quite literally, I will get the opportunity to knock it out of the park. And me knocking out of the park on one of these right decisions will ultimately outweigh the negatives of the wrongs that I have done.
I've had a lot of mentors in my career. Many of them were paid, a few of them were free. The point of a good teacher is that the student does pass the teacher. I see this thing that happens all the time. When you are a kid and you learn arithmetic, first you learn your numbers, and then you learn how to add. You level up and you learn how to multiply. And then you level up from there and you learn algebra. When you get to algebra, you don't think, man, my arithmetic teacher was a f***ing idiot. I can't believe they didn't teach me this stuff. It's like, dude, you weren't ready. And you had to have the arithmetic in order to get to the multiplication. And it's not that that teacher was an idiot, it's that that was the sequence. And so when you have a first teacher that teaches you the basics and then you have a more advanced teacher later, it doesn't mean you should shit on your first teacher. It's like that person got you ready to receive the next thing. Earlier on in my career, I definitely did the other way. This guy didn't know anything, this guy is the guy. Rather than seeing it like you would see any other thing that you'd have in school. I've had the opportunity and the gift of being able to mentor, whatever you want to say, provide advice, counsel, share my experiences. A lot of people hold me in a regard, and most people who are winners are competitive. It's just like who you are, right? You want to win, you want to beat everybody, because that's part of the competitive drive. But I think there's a comma there that needs to get put in, which is that you have to accept two things. One is that you are going to die and no one is going to remember. Like real. 10,000 years from now, no one's going to remember at all. Number two is that when you're at the end of your life, the people who are going to be by your bedside are not the people who you vanquished, but the people that you helped. I know that I have passed a lot of the mentors that I've had in my career in terms of financials, etc. Earlier on, used to think that made me better than them. As I've had a couple more years and some more scars, I've realized something different, which is that I was only able to get better than them because they gave me the head start. Step on my shoulder, you can reach that next branch. I think I experienced a lot of joy knowing that other people
don't have to suffer as much. Yeah, we were walking around outside yesterday and someone's like, dude, I did everything you have and we're doing $4 million a year now. Like, he was like emotional just knowing that it's happening. It makes stomaching the hard times easier. It feels like it's not just me trying to do this for myself, it's me trying to do this for a lot of people. If I'm failing over and over again at this thing, I know that once I figure it out, I'll be able to help 100 people cheat code their way through it and not spend 5 months figuring something out or 2 years figuring something out. Like, I was stuck at mid 30 million for 3 years. To everyone watching, they're like, boo hoo. That's not the point. Is that there's another guy who's gonna get to that point and he's gonna move right past it, like in a blink of an eye, because he'll have had the right advice that I didn't have. And I think that if the mentees and the mentors both see it that way, then the mentees will stop on the mentors that help them, and the mentors will stop trying to hold back secrets that have propelled them further, because the point is not that you're gonna beat everyone. You're gonna get really old, and then you're gonna die. As you're getting older, there are gonna be people who are younger who had a head start. And as long as the next guy honors the fact that that guy died on the battlefield to give him these lessons and come back, and they have to recognize that they're going to die on the battlefield too for the next generation to pass them, they have it easier than us. That's the point of progress. And so rather than lamenting that the next generation has it easier, I thought that what we all say, I want to make the world a better place, well, that's what making the world a better place looks like. We say that this is our mission with our business. We want to make the world a better place. We want to make an impact. And then when it actually happens, we resent the kids for the fact that they didn't have it as hard as us. That was the point. My point is not to beat the progeny. My point is to forge as far as I can, look back and be like, hey, watch out for that hole, watch out for that rock, keep going, keep going. They move through the path that we tread 3 times faster than we did because we already cleared all the trees. They get to the next non-clearing and they have to start hacking away and hacking away and hacking away to forge the next path. And then they become the mentors, turn around, and the next generation moves 6 times as fast to cover my distance and their distance. If you look at some of the greatest success stories, a lot of them talk about their mentors. Warren Buffett had his mentor early on. The quick story on that was that he said, I'll work for you for free, and Paul Graham told him, you're overpriced. He was the one who's going to be giving far more to this relationship. Even if Warren gave him his time, he still was going to be on the losing side, but he still did it anyways because he recognized that Warren had a gift. Warren passed him in his career. You'll notice that Warren isn't like, man, I'm so much better than Paul Graham. I passed that dude in my 40s. He doesn't talk like that. We really do stand on the shoulders of the giants. When I think about the gratitude that I have for the Gary V's, who's 12 years older than I am, he's forged so much of this path that I didn't have to think about how am I going to create this whole thing. It's like he already had a blueprint and I can just start laying that out, immediately execute. There are guys who we have in our portfolio right now who are in their 20s, who are making twice what I was making at 30. But if they came to me below and then now they're above, that was the point. Gary Vee didn't have Gary Vee to mentor him on his career. I do right now. We all do. Many of us will pass Gary, and I don't think Gary minds. There's a 20-year-old, and it might be you who's watching this, and you've got me. That's the point. I'm still going to be hustling and trying to beat you. Don't get me wrong. When I see guys who are in their 60s, I'm like, man, by the time I'm 60, I'm going to be 10 times as wealthy as them. 10 times the real estate. I have 10 times the, yeah. But if they had themselves as mentors, they would too. If your mentees and the students that you have and the people that you help and the people that you teach don't move above you, it means that you're a bad teacher, not a good one. The new definition of success of a teacher is that the students surpass the teacher and then get to the point where they're both looking together with his experience and his raw talent, looking at the new landscape saying, all right, what do you think we should do?
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you're different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Grant Cardone, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Do not study a millionaire. Once a person becomes a millionaire, the first thing they do, unfortunately, is go into conservation to protect the million. Study multimillionaires. Study people that have consistently developed and proven